Have you ever felt like you're giving your all to someone, but somehow they're always one step ahead, and you're left wondering if they truly care? Maybe you've had a friend or loved one who only seems to reach out when it benefits them, but when you need support, they're nowhere to be found. It's that nagging feeling of doubt, like something's just not quite right. Have you been there? Let me share a personal experience with you. Not long ago, I found myself in a situation where I thought I had a close friend. We shared plenty of good moments, and I believed they had my back. But when times got tough for me, they disappeared. It wasn't just once, it was a pattern. I started to notice something. They were always there when things were easy, when there was something to gain. But when I needed emotional support or someone to lean on, they were nowhere to be found. That realization hit hard. And like many of you, I asked myself, why does this keep happening? What if I told you that this behavior is more common than you think? And what if there was a way to spot these fake people before they drain your emotional energy? Well, you're in the right place to find out. In this video, I'll guide you through 8 signs of fake behavior, backed by Stoic principles and modern psychological science, so you can protect yourself and maintain your inner peace. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll not only recognize these behaviors, but you'll also know how to handle them with wisdom and resilience. If this sounds like something you need, don't forget to like and subscribe to Stoic Narratives Official, where we dive deep into Stoicism and real-life applications to help you thrive. Let's get started. 1. Using you to look better. We've all experienced it. Someone who is constantly around, eager to share moments with you, but only when it benefits their social image. They may act like your best friend, showering you with attention, but the moment they need to enhance their status, they leave you behind. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, drives some people to associate with you, but it's not because they genuinely care. It's because they want to be associated with someone they perceive as better or more interesting. I once had a relationship like this. She was everything I thought I needed at the time: charming, well-connected, and always attentive when the spotlight was on her. However, as soon as the attention shifted away from her, things changed. There were constant subtle signals that she was using me, not for love, but for status. The conversations were never about me. They were always about how much she could gain from being seen with someone successful, someone who would elevate her in the eyes of others. One day, after I had shared a personal accomplishment, she smiled, nodded, and quickly changed the topic to something entirely irrelevant, something that benefited her image. It stung, but it was also a wake-up call. I had become a tool for social validation rather than a true partner in her life. The feeling was like a cold, silent betrayal. I felt used, but the truth was I had allowed myself to be used. I had let her define my worth based on her perception of social success, and I had become so focused on the validation she offered that I didn't see the manipulation until it was too late. This is the reality for many of us. People who use our presence to increase their own social validation while leaving us emotionally drained without ever truly giving back. It's a cycle that, unless we recognize it early, can trap us in toxic relationships. What can Stoicism teach us in situations like these? First and foremost, the Stoic perspective helps us detach from the desire for external validation. We are not the sum of the people who surround us, nor should our self-worth be defined by how others see us. The Stoics remind us that the only thing truly in our control is our actions, thoughts, and reactions. When faced with someone who uses us for social validation, a Stoic response would be to evaluate the situation objectively. What is this person truly contributing to my life? Do they genuinely care for my well-being, or are they using me as a tool to elevate their social standing? This reflection allows us to separate emotional attachment from logical assessment. The next step is to set boundaries. Stoicism teaches us the value of self-discipline and maintaining a calm, rational mindset even in the face of manipulation. If we find ourselves consistently giving more than we receive, we can adjust our expectations, remain grounded, and refuse to let the relationship dictate our emotions. In my own experience, it was only when I began to truly understand my value, not through someone else's eyes, that I was able to stop relying on external validation. By practicing Stoic principles like wisdom and temperance, I learned to recognize when I was being used, and I gained the courage to walk away. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, where someone is using you for social status or validation, here are a few Stoic-inspired steps to follow. Recognize the signs early. Pay attention to the red flags. If someone only reaches out when it's convenient for them, or only speaks about themselves, they're likely using you to improve their image. The more aware you are, the less power they have over you. Detach from external validation. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeking approval from others, but the Stoics teach us that true peace comes from internal validation. Focus on your values, not someone else's perception of you. Recognize that you do not need others to elevate your worth. Establish boundaries. If someone is constantly taking from you and giving nothing in return, it's essential to create distance. This doesn't mean ending the relationship entirely, but rather adjusting how much emotional energy you're willing to invest in someone who is not reciprocating it. Know when to let go. Sometimes, the best way to handle these situations is to walk away. If the relationship is draining you or preventing your emotional growth, Stoic wisdom teaches us that it is better to leave a toxic relationship than to remain in it out of fear of missing out or loneliness. In the end, you are the architect of your peace. Let no one define your worth by their standards. Embrace the Stoic virtues of wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage to ensure that your relationships are based on mutual respect and true care, not the fleeting desire for social validation. Remember, true strength lies in the ability to stand alone, seek self-approval, and cultivate relationships that are based on mutual respect, not the need for external validation. Keep your peace. 2. Fake people. Avoid vulnerability and accountability. There's a peculiar kind of discomfort you feel when someone claims to care about your well-being, but shies away from truly engaging in the emotional depth of your struggles. I once had a close friend who always made me feel like he was there for me, offering words of comfort when I was facing challenges. But the more I observed, the more I realized that something wasn't quite right. He'd be there when I needed a distraction, when I was feeling low, always offering quick fixes to make me feel better. But when it came time for real, difficult conversations, the kind where you get vulnerable and share your most painful truths, he'd retreat. I remember one particular time when I was going through a tough breakup. I felt lost, unsure of myself, and overwhelmed by emotions. He told me he'd be there to listen, that he was a good friend and could help me through it. But when I opened up about the pain I was feeling, about my doubts and my fears for the future, he did something strange. Instead of engaging, instead of offering true emotional support, he shifted the conversation back to himself. He started talking about his own life, his own experiences, and how he had been through worse. It wasn't that I didn't want to hear his experiences. It was that at that moment, I needed someone who could listen, someone who could offer the kind of emotional connection that was required to heal. But he avoided it. In the moment, I felt like I was being selfish for wanting to talk about my pain. But as I reflected, I realized that his behavior was a clear sign of emotional labor avoidance. He wasn't comfortable engaging in vulnerability, not because he didn't care about me, but because he didn't know how to handle the intensity of real emotions. It's much easier to offer a shallow distraction than to confront the discomfort of someone else's struggles. This wasn't about being a bad person. It was about him wanting to maintain the image of being a good friend without putting in the work required to be one. The key lesson here is that fake people, or those who aren't emotionally available, will often shy away from vulnerability and accountability. They want to appear as though they are supportive, but they will avoid the deeper, more difficult work that's required to help someone truly heal or grow. This behavior often comes from a place of discomfort. Not necessarily malice, but a lack of emotional maturity. They don't want to deal with their own emotions, so they deflect, avoiding any situation where they might have to confront something uncomfortable, whether it's your pain or their own. So how do we navigate situations like this? The first step is recognizing it for what it is: emotional avoidance. It's important to acknowledge that while you may want support from people around you, not everyone has the emotional capacity to truly help in the way you need. The Stoic principle of indifference teaches us to accept the things we cannot change. And in these situations, that means accepting that some people, no matter how well-intentioned, won't be able to provide the emotional depth you might seek. And that's okay. Instead of trying to force those who aren't emotionally equipped to support you, focus on building your inner resilience. The Stoics believed that our true strength comes from within, and we are ultimately responsible for how we respond to external situations. It doesn't mean we should isolate ourselves or stop seeking support, but it does mean we need to take ownership of our emotional well-being. One effective strategy is to set boundaries with people who avoid emotional engagement. Understand that they may never be the ones to offer the depth of connection you need, and that's a reflection of their limitations, not a flaw in you. Instead of looking to them for validation, seek out relationships with those who are genuinely capable of providing the kind of emotional labor that fosters growth and healing. At the end of the day, the most important relationship you have is with yourself. The Stoic focus on self-reliance and self-awareness is key to navigating relationships with people who might not always be emotionally present. By accepting others as they are and focusing on building your emotional resilience, you will create a life where you are not dependent on others' emotional availability to feel whole. So, if you find yourself in a situation where someone is offering words of comfort but avoiding real emotional connection, recognize it for what it is. Don't blame yourself or feel guilty for wanting more. Instead, shift your focus inward, take control of your emotional state, and choose wisely who you let into your circle. Real support is rooted in vulnerability, and those who can't offer it aren't worth your time. Stay true to yourself, and in doing so, you'll attract the kind of genuine connections that truly matter. 3. They vanish when you need them the most. You've probably experienced it, that gut-wrenching feeling when you need someone the most, yet they're nowhere to be found. It's almost as if they vanish the moment your world starts to crumble. There was a time in my life when I needed help more than ever, and a close friend was supposed to be there. At least, that's what I thought. This friend had always been the one to offer advice, the one who promised to have my back no matter what. We shared laughs, memories, and countless hours, so I naturally believed that, in times of distress, they would step up. But when I found myself in the middle of a personal crisis, struggling with a tough decision that could shape my future, this same friend disappeared. I reached out, hoping to hear a comforting voice, to share the burden, but all I received was silence. I couldn't believe it. I waited for a message, for a call, anything to feel supported. The more time passed, the more I realized that my friend wasn't the reliable person I thought they were. This experience made me realize something unsettling about relationships. Some people are only there for the good times, the easy conversations. They're not equipped or simply unwilling to show up when things get hard. They may offer their support in passing when everything is fine, but when your life is in turmoil, they're nowhere to be found. The feelings I had during that time were confusing and painful. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung, it was the sense of loneliness. I had believed that the people closest to me would act as anchors when I felt like I was drifting. But instead, they let me float in the stormy waters of uncertainty alone. I found myself questioning everything, wondering if I had misjudged their sincerity. This is where Stoicism, with its focus on emotional control and inner peace, offers a valuable lesson. The Stoics believed in not relying on external factors for our happiness and well-being. They taught that no matter what happens in the world around us, we must cultivate an inner strength and a sense of self-reliance that comes from within. In this situation, the key lesson I learned, and one that can be applied to anyone facing similar feelings of abandonment or disappointment, is that our emotional state must not hinge on the actions of others. It's easy to think that we need someone else to fix our problems or to make us feel better, but the reality is that we have the power to remain calm and grounded, even when others fall short. The Stoic practice of focusing on what is within our control is essential here. Instead of waiting for someone else to rescue us, we can shift our attention to how we respond. Do we let our emotions spiral? Do we wallow in anger or sadness? Or do we recognize that while we can't control others' actions, we can control our responses? One of the fundamental aspects of Stoic philosophy is the distinction between what is up to us and what is not. In this case, the fact that my friend wasn't there for me was beyond my control. But how I reacted to their absence, whether I let it define my sense of self-worth, whether I allowed it to trigger feelings of insecurity, was entirely within my control. When faced with situations like these, remember that the power to navigate them lies not in how others behave, but in how you decide to respond. Don't let the actions of those who are unreliable and insincere shake your emotional foundation. Instead, focus on your own response, choosing acceptance, emotional control, and ultimately, peace. It's crucial to remember that this is not about becoming emotionally distant or indifferent toward others. It's about protecting your emotional well-being and learning to manage your expectations. Not everyone will show up for you when you need them, and that's a reality we must accept. But we don't need others to be our crutch. We are the ones responsible for maintaining our balance. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you feel abandoned or let down by someone, use this as an opportunity to strengthen your inner resolve. Rely on your wisdom and resilience to weather the storm. Remember, the only person who can truly ensure you're not left adrift is yourself. 4. They never take the initiative to reach out. We've all been there. You're the one who always reaches out first, always the one sending the texts, making the calls, and setting up the meetups. It feels almost like a routine at this point, but something in your gut tells you that it's not quite right. Have you ever found yourself in this situation? You constantly try to connect with someone, but they never seem to take the first step. They only reach out when they need something or when it's convenient for them. This pattern slowly starts to reveal the true nature of the relationship. I remember a time when a close friend of my wife's was involved in our lives regularly. We went out together, spent time with each other, and shared several laughs. Everything seemed great, but there was one glaring issue that I just couldn't ignore. She was never the one to initiate anything. If there was a gathering, I had to suggest it. If there was a conversation to be had, I had to start it. Otherwise, we wouldn't hear from her at all. At first, I thought it was just her personality. Maybe she wasn't the type to reach out often. But soon, it became clear. She wasn't invested in our friendship. She was just there when it suited her. One night, after weeks of always being the one to make the effort, I called her up to check on her, and as usual, I got nothing. No response. No effort. But the moment she needed something, a favor, a quick chat, suddenly, she was there. It hit me. I wasn't a true friend to her. I was a convenient tool for her social circle when she needed something. This pattern of only reaching out when she needed help or when it was beneficial to her felt draining. It was a clear sign. I was dealing with someone who was using me, not valuing me. The pain of being used like this isn't just about the feeling of being unimportant. It's deeper than that. It's about realizing that the person you considered a friend may not see you as anything more than a resource. The imbalance in this relationship is undeniable, and it creates a silent resentment. It's not easy to confront this behavior, especially when they are good at hiding it behind a mask of politeness or charm. Here's where Stoicism offers some clarity. According to Stoic principles, you are in control of your actions and responses, but you cannot control others. The idea of focusing on what is within your power and letting go of what isn't is essential in these situations. The emotional toll of constantly being the one to initiate contact or the one to keep a one-sided relationship going can wear you down. Instead of focusing on the hurt or frustration, the Stoics advise us to focus on our integrity and actions. In the face of this behavior, it's crucial to ask yourself, what do I want from this relationship? If you're always the one giving and the other person is never reciprocating, it may be time to reevaluate whether this connection is worth keeping. Is this a friendship that adds value to your life, or is it simply draining you? The answer, according to Stoicism, lies in your ability to choose how you react. If you decide that you no longer want to keep initiating contact, then stop. Let the relationship settle where it will. It's important not to chase someone who isn't truly interested in investing in you. Stoic philosophy teaches us that external validation and social connections should never be the sole basis of our happiness or self-worth. If a relationship no longer serves you, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, it's perfectly okay to step back and focus on nurturing the bonds that truly matter. This doesn't mean cutting people off in anger or frustration. It means doing so with clarity and peace. The Stoic approach to these kinds of situations is one of calm observation and self-awareness. Recognize the pattern for what it is and take action that aligns with your well-being. Letting go of relationships that no longer serve you is a powerful yet peaceful act. Lesson in action plan. If you notice that you're always the one reaching out and the other person never reciprocates, it's time to pause and evaluate what this relationship brings into your life. Ask yourself if this dynamic is helping you grow emotionally or if it's simply draining you. Recognize that your time and energy are valuable, and sometimes the best thing you can do is focus on the people who truly invest in you. By practicing Stoicism, you learn to detach emotionally from these one-sided relationships and regain your peace of mind. Choose your actions wisely, and don't be afraid to let go of connections that don't add value to your life. 5. The conversations are all about them. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where no matter how hard you try, the focus always circles back to them? No matter what you say, no matter how much you share, the conversation somehow finds its way back to their latest achievement, their newest drama, or the next big thing in their life. And you're just a listener, a bystander in your interaction. It's draining, isn't it? I once had a friend from high school who always seemed to have something new to talk about. At first, I enjoyed our conversations. We had a lot in common, and it was easy to connect. But over time, I began to notice a pattern. Every conversation, no matter the subject, always turned back to him. Whether we were talking about something as simple as a movie we had just seen or something more serious like family matters, he would find a way to redirect the conversation back to himself. It wasn't malicious at first. I thought maybe he just liked to talk. But over time, I began to feel that I was being dismissed. My thoughts and feelings, no matter how important they were to me, didn't seem to matter. One evening, I tried sharing a personal challenge I was going through at work. I had been dealing with a difficult situation, and I needed someone to listen. I thought, this is what friends are for, right? I shared my frustration, my thoughts, and my emotions. But within a few minutes, he had shifted the conversation back to his struggles with his job. It was as if my words didn't matter. It wasn't that he wasn't listening. It was more that he didn't want to hear me. I wasn't the one who needed support. He was. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was going through something. Maybe he didn't realize what he was doing. But it became clearer with each conversation. This was a pattern. I was no longer just a friend to him. I was an audience, a captive listener to his ongoing narrative. The Stoic perspective teaches us that true relationships are rooted in mutual respect and understanding. As Marcus Aurelius put it, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. True friends, true companions, don't just talk about themselves. They listen. They offer their own experiences and emotions, but they also make space for others. This experience with my old friend taught me the importance of discernment. It's crucial to recognize when someone is using your time and energy solely for their benefit, without offering anything in return. The lesson: if you find yourself constantly listening to someone talk about their world without a genuine interest in yours, it's time to take a step back. It doesn't mean cutting ties immediately, but it does mean reassessing the balance of the relationship. A true friend doesn't just take up your space, they share it with you. The next time you find yourself in a conversation like this, pause, reflect. Ask yourself, are you being heard? Or are you just the backdrop to someone else's story? The Stoic way of life encourages us to seek peace within, regardless of external circumstances. If your interactions with others leave you feeling drained or unseen, it's important to recognize this and take steps to preserve your emotional well-being. Don't allow yourself to be a passive participant in relationships where you are not valued. Seek those who truly listen, those who are willing to create space for your thoughts and feelings, just as they do for their own. Balance in communication is key to maintaining both inner peace and healthy, fulfilling connections. 6. They always want something from you. There's an unmistakable feeling that comes with being used, a creeping sense of unease that grows stronger the more you give and the less you receive in return. It's not always overt, but the signs are there. You start to notice that certain people only reach out when they need something from you, whether it's advice, a favor, or just your time. It's almost as if your value to them is only in what you can provide, not in who you are. I remember a relationship I had with a woman a few years ago. We had been together for a while, and at first, things felt like they were on the right track. But as time went on, something felt off. I was the one who always made the effort to support her, listen to her problems, and try to help in any way I could. But when it was my turn, when I needed someone to talk to, or needed a shoulder to lean on, she was nowhere to be found. At first, I brushed it off. I thought, maybe I was just being too sensitive. After all, relationships require effort from both sides, right? But soon, the signs were impossible to ignore. Whenever there was something she wanted, whether it was a ride, some advice, or a favor, she would always come to me. But when I asked for something in return, no matter how small, there was always an excuse. She had too much on her plate or was too busy with her own life. The pattern became clear. I wasn't in a mutual relationship. I was just a resource, someone to turn to when she needed help. One evening, after yet another one-sided conversation, I started to feel that familiar pit in my stomach. I realized I was no longer a priority. I was just a tool for her convenience. I felt used. This wasn't about love or care. It was about selfishness. The more I gave, the less I received, and the more I was drained emotionally. At that moment, something clicked. I understood that I had allowed this dynamic to persist. I hadn't set boundaries. I hadn't spoken up when I felt taken advantage of. This behavior wasn't just unfair to me. It was toxic. It was a clear sign that I needed to step back and reassess my relationship with her. If you find yourself in a similar situation, here's the Stoic lesson you should keep in mind. Control what you can control, and don't allow yourself to be defined by others' actions. The Stoics teach us to focus on what's within our control, our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. You can't control whether someone wants to use you, but you can control how you respond. Don't let someone's selfishness dictate your emotional state. The first step is recognizing the behavior. If someone constantly takes but never gives, it's time to reassess the relationship. Are they truly invested in your well-being, or are they just taking advantage of your generosity? This is a hard pill to swallow, but it's necessary for your emotional health. And remember, the Stoic approach is about accepting the situation as it is and moving forward with wisdom and strength. Setting boundaries is another crucial step. Stoicism teaches us to cultivate inner strength and resilience, not just in the face of adversity, but in all relationships. When you recognize that someone is only using you for their benefit, it's your responsibility to protect your energy and your time. Don't be afraid to say no. Saying no is one of the most powerful tools you have in maintaining your emotional peace and integrity. Lastly, take time to reflect on what you want from your relationships. True friends and true connections should be based on mutual respect and care. Don't settle for anything less. If someone continuously takes without giving back, they're not a true friend. They're just a taker. And while it's hard to face the truth, it's also necessary for your growth. Surround yourself with people who value you for who you are, not just what you can give. In the end, the Stoic lesson here is simple. Don't let anyone drain your energy without giving back. Learn to recognize the signs of people who only want something from you. And don't be afraid to set the boundaries that protect your peace of mind. Just as the Stoics would have you do, control your response and your actions, and in doing so, you'll find the strength to let go of toxic relationships and reclaim your emotional balance. 7. They speak behind your back. Have you ever had someone you trusted, someone you considered a friend or colleague, talk behind your back? It's one of the most painful and eye-opening experiences you can go through. They smile in your face, yet speak ill of you when you're not around. It's not just about the betrayal, it's about the erosion of trust. Something that once felt solid now feels hollow and fragile. I remember a time when I worked with a colleague I thought was a true ally. We were close. We spent hours discussing work, life, and even personal matters. I confided in them about my challenges, my ambitions, and my fears. They seemed like someone who understood. But over time, I started hearing whispers. Comments about things I had shared in confidence were misinterpreted or twisted in ways that didn't match the way I had told them. It wasn't just that they disagreed with me, it was that they were actively undermining me. I heard, through another colleague, that this person had been telling others I was overhyped, not as competent as I seemed, and too ambitious for my good. They spoke as if they were the voice of reason, trying to protect others from my so-called overconfidence. The worst part? They didn't have the decency to say any of this to my face. They had already been planting seeds of doubt behind my back, making others question my integrity, my value, and my professionalism. The realization hit hard. I had trusted them, perhaps too much. And while I tried to brush it off, the sting remained. It's a gut-wrenching feeling, knowing that someone you've confided in, someone you've considered a friend, would go out of their way to tear you down when you're not around. It's a form of betrayal that cuts deep. They hadn't just damaged our relationship, they had poisoned the perception of me among the people I worked with. But here's where Stoicism comes in. As painful as it was, I had to remind myself of what was within my control. The actions of others, not my concern. Their opinions, not my problem. What I could control was how I responded. I could easily let anger consume me. I could retaliate, talk behind their back as they had done with me. I could harbor resentment and let it fester. But that would only make me a reflection of their behavior. Instead, I chose a Stoic approach. I reminded myself that people will speak, they will gossip, and they will judge. It's inevitable. But I could control how I responded to these actions. I chose to focus on the things that matter. My work, my integrity, my relationships with those who truly support me. I found solace in knowing that a true friend doesn't need to tear others down to build themselves up. A true ally stands with you, not behind your back. So, how can you handle this situation if you find yourself in a similar position? First, recognize that the problem isn't you. It's their inability to show integrity and honesty. Don't let their words define your worth. Second, take a step back and evaluate the relationship. Was it based on mutual respect, or was it one-sided? People who speak ill of you behind your back are not your friends, and they don't deserve your time or energy. Cut the ties and move forward. Finally, remember that your peace of mind is worth far more than any petty drama. By responding with wisdom and restraint, you not only protect your emotional well-being, but also rise above the negativity that others try to impose on you. Stoicism teaches us that we are responsible for our inner peace. No one can take that from us unless we allow them to. In the end, speaking ill of someone behind their back says more about the speaker than it does about the person being spoken about. You can't control their words, but you can control your response. And that in itself is the greatest form of wisdom and emotional strength. 8. They act like they care, but they never listen. Have you ever had someone close to you who acts like they care, but when it comes down to it, they seem to forget everything you share with them? It's one of those experiences that leaves you questioning not just the person, but your judgment. You realize that what you've thought was a genuine connection may have been something far more self-serving. Let me tell you about a friend of mine. Someone I lived with for a while. We shared an apartment in college, and during that time, I would talk to them about the things that were weighing on me. Projects, exams, personal struggles. Every time they'd listen, nodding along, but there was always this disconnection. What stood out to me was the way they'd respond. "Oh, you're still working on that?" Or, "Wait, you've told me about this before, haven't you?" At first, I thought it was just casual forgetfulness. But as time went on, it became more apparent that they weren't just forgetting. They were disregarding. They weren't interested in what I had to say. I could see that their responses were more about being polite than actually engaging with my concerns. It wasn't just indifference. It was a deeper form of neglect, as if they didn't want to invest in the friendship beyond surface-level conversations. It made me feel insignificant. I felt as if my thoughts, struggles, and goals didn't matter. It was a painful realization, especially because I had treated this person like a confidant, someone I could rely on. But all the while, they were using my vulnerabilities to make themselves feel better, without truly listening or caring about the things that were truly important to me. The key lesson here is that relationships, whether they're friendships or romantic ones, require genuine engagement and effort. When someone acts as if they care but never truly listens, it's a sign that they might be more interested in the idea of being close to you for their social gain, rather than offering real emotional support. This is something the Stoics understood well. When we invest our time and energy into people who aren't truly present, we allow them to affect our peace of mind. Here's how I process this situation. Recognize the signs. The first step is to notice the small signs of disconnection. If someone seems to forget your struggles, repeat the same things over and over, or never engage deeply with what you say, this is a red flag. Don't dismiss it. Stoic wisdom teaches us to pay attention to patterns, not just individual actions. Don't take it personally. The next step is not to internalize the behavior. It's easy to start questioning yourself. Am I not interesting enough? Or am I not worth listening to? The Stoic mindset encourages us to detach from external validation. Their lack of interest isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their inability to truly connect. Set boundaries. With this awareness, you can make a conscious decision to set boundaries. There's no need to continue investing emotional energy into relationships that drain your peace. The Stoics remind us that we have control over how much we give of ourselves to others. Protecting your emotional energy is key to maintaining inner tranquility. Choose quality over quantity. Ultimately, true connection requires depth, not just proximity. If someone is only interested in you when it benefits them, or if they're more focused on themselves, it's time to reevaluate that relationship. Invest your time in people who genuinely care about your well-being, and be willing to let go of those who are only there for surface-level interactions. As you navigate the complexities of relationships, remember that the Stoic practice of focusing on what's in your control, your thoughts, your actions, your responses, is the best way to ensure that you don't lose yourself to people who aren't truly invested in you. True friends and allies don't need to be reminded of your struggles or goals. They listen, they understand, and they support you without hesitation. If you encounter someone who doesn't offer that kind of presence, it's okay to walk away and seek peace elsewhere. Your inner peace, after all, is one of the few things that no one can take from you, unless you allow them to. In the journey of life, we are often surrounded by people who wear masks, hiding their true intentions and feelings. The signs are subtle at first, but over time they become impossible to ignore. Whether it's when someone uses you for their social gain, fails to remember your struggles, or simply speaks ill of you behind your back, these moments offer us valuable lessons. They remind us that not all relationships are built on genuine care, and not everyone who appears close to you truly has your best interests at heart. But this is where the Stoic wisdom comes into play. The Stoics taught us that our peace of mind doesn't depend on others, but on ourselves. We must learn to control our responses, to detach from the actions of those around us, and to focus on what is within our control. Life will always present challenges and difficult people, but it's how we respond to them that defines us. By practicing the Stoic virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, we cultivate an inner strength that no external force can shake. When you encounter those who don't truly listen or care, remember that it is their weakness, not yours. You must choose to remain calm, composed, and true to yourself. I encourage you to reflect on these lessons every day. Use each interaction, whether with loved ones, colleagues, or acquaintances, as an opportunity to practice patience, mindfulness, and emotional control. Strive to remain steadfast in your values, and remember, true peace comes not from the world around you, but from within. Thank you for joining me today. If this message resonates with you, I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Stoic Narratives Official for more wisdom on how to navigate life with strength and serenity.